Good evening. My name is Jerome Deering Bay. I'm a representative and co-founder of rcsnow.org and Crime Sentencing Reform in conjunction and affiliation with Rich Moines Productions and Image for Lives. And with that being said, we want to speak about a topic that we have been getting a lot of phone calls on, dealing with the dysfunction in the reentry process across the United States. And what that basically means, reentry, the dysfunction, self-explanatory, is that when individuals are released from state or federal prison, they have to go through a process of reentry. That means leaving prison, coming to a halfway house or a community correctional center, and then re-entering their particular communities. And a lot of concerned citizens have spoken about the inadequacy of that particular process. Now, I can't give you the budget that's available as it relates to resources for individuals coming out of prison in 2022 or 2023. I can't give you that budget. There's an estimate. I know that, coming out of federal prison, you come out of federal prison with a bus ticket, minimal allocation for food while you're on that bus till you get to your destination, minimum, and enough money for a taxi cab if you need to take a taxi cab to get to your destination, whether it be the halfway house, home confinement, or something along that line. So all that is minimum. 30, 40 years ago, you got a gate pass of $500 or better. The state is probably a lot different than that, than the feds. So that's been reduced drastically because the emphasis on reentry has all went into the institutions to create programs. So the budget has been established to establish programming and provide jobs within the prison setting. As far as what's available to the individual that's being released from federal, state, or prison, that has been diminished drastically over the last 30 years. And so, again, a lot of parents and citizens are concerned due to that reduction because a lot of parents and have went and loved ones have went and picked up family members, husbands, wives, children, to bring them back to the geographical location of where they're from. And they get firsthand experience of dealing with the lack of adequate resources that are available to individuals that are coming up out of these state and federal prisons. Now, again, that budget has been reduced over time. And it's been reduced over time due to the political climate in which we have experienced over the last 30 years. But again, those resources have been put to other sectors. It's not just the practice of reentry and the resources that are available. Education has taken a hit. Senior citizens have taken a hit. Roads, bridges, a lot of our infrastructure in our society has taken hits. So naturally, what do we look like putting money in the reentry process, and all our other institutions are suffering budget cuts. And that's, again, it's unfortunate being that we live in the greatest country in the world. But I would appeal to voters, advocates, and community-based organizations to start looking at the data on this process, because we've run into a problem again which is an old problem. It's an old problem. You have individuals that are coming out of our institutions who have purportedly been rehabilitated, and they're coming back out into the communities in which they're from, and they're finding it hard to function. And the function comes from the dysfunctional process of our reentry program. I mean, when you're in prison, they have a reentry program. Ones I've been in, anyway. And that reentry program is developed by bringing in some community-based businesses to interview you for a job. And that's the extent of that. You get interviewed for a job. There's no other resource that's put in place to help you deal with the mental deficiencies that you might be suffering after 20 or 30 years. Not that you can't get them in the community, because they do have some good programs, but it's not directly tied to the reentry process when one leaves prison. These are programs that are developed by the community itself, which allows you to participate in those particular programs. And I want to give honor to that. And so you have individuals that come out of prison who haven't received much mental care, medical care, educational, vocational care. And so they come out here basically in a world that has passed them by. And that's what makes that process dysfunctional, because they're re-entering a society that they haven't been trained to re-enter while they're in prison. You don't get top flight computer education, tech education. You don't get the type of vocational training that you need to go in and enter into the workplace that has developed in the last 20 or 30 years. You basically get a community correctional center and a job working in a facility for less than minimum wage so that you can maintain your bed in that community correctional center and hopefully maintain clear conduct while you're there. Don't get strung out on drugs or alcohol and get disruptive, commit another crime, and go back to prison. That's the only thing that's designed for. It doesn't adequately prepare you for upward mobility. And when most people are in prison and are trying to rehabilitate themselves, their main focus is, man, I don't want to have to go through this again. I'm looking for some upward mobility. So if we don't have the training in place, the education in place, the vocations in place, and the resources in place to aid and assist an appropriate, functional re-entry practice or process, all we're doing is condition a lot of men and women for recidivism, because they're going to get stressed out and continue to revert back to the same lifestyle that they were used to prior to going to prison. And this is all by design. And I hate saying that, because I hate to think that a educated society would allow this tragedy to manifest itself when we, as a society, intelligent, progressive, are supposed to be preparing individuals who do go into our nation's prison system to be law-abiding citizens, redeemable, and productive in their communities. But you can't expect that if you don't have in place the resources that are necessary to develop that mindset. And it's a difficult task. I'm not saying everybody that comes out of prison is going to attain that mindset, because they're not. But you have those individuals that truly want to do that. And so Rich Mornings Productions, rcsnow.org, and Image for Lives is committed in trying to articulate that concept and that perception to individuals who are in the position to look at it, prepare plans, prepare proposals, legislation, in hopes of achieving that result. That might stymie some of the violence that we're currently experiencing in our country. I had to revert back to that segment for the simple reason it all goes hand in hand. Even though Most of the individuals that are out here currently committing violent crimes haven't been in prison. Yet and still, when the media looks to records, that's the first thing they look for, to see if they got a prior record. And so they'll put forward traffic violations, this, domestic abuse charges, things like that, stuff people don't even go to prison for anymore. But it is attributed to men and women who have spent decades in prison for a non-violent offense. And I think that's totally unfair. So prior to getting off track with this conversation, we're trying to develop the necessary dialogue and data to take a closer look at why we have so much dysfunction in the reentry process. You know, it must be noted, and I have to say this, and I say this heartfelt. I don't think that everybody that's in a position, law enforcement's in a position to enforce law. They're not in a position to hold your hand and help you through that particular process. They're there to enforce law. Took me a long time to understand that. Long time. Community correctional officers and centers, these people are trained not to trust anything that a prisoner says when they come out of prison. A prisoner coming out of prison has to prove themselves to these individuals. All probation officers, all community correctional center staff are not godlike. They have their same issues that every other human being on the face of the earth has. So they might be having a bad day. Somebody might come in there stressed out and get a little loud or whatever, and they got an issue. Accountability. Responsibility. Truly, a man or woman coming out of prison has to be responsible for their actions and their conduct. So they have to remain conscious at all times. But in the same breath, the individuals that they are answerable to also have to be appropriate in dealing with the issues that these individuals face. But we don't look at it from that perspective. And I can't blame society as a whole for not even looking at it at all, for the simple reason everybody in the country suffers. High gas prices, unemployment, minimum wage, the effects of nature. I mean, losing their property, all kinds of different things that are occurring in our world. And it reflects upon each and every one of us. But for the individuals, men and women who come up out of prison, rehabilitated, trying to do the right thing, non-violent, I mean, we need to have the appropriate apparatuses in place through our institutions, through our community corrections that are there to aid and assist them with that particular process. And like I said, everybody that comes up out of prison are not going to be inclined to be a law-abiding, redeemed product of their community. And so I'm not misguided on that particular point. But there are those who truly wish to take part in living out the rest of their lives in a law-abiding, productive manner. And I would hope that this particular video podcast gets to the churches, the community organizations, lawmakers, every ordinary citizen to know that, your sons and daughters are redeemable too, under the sun. Under the sun. Remember that. So with that being said, have a good evening, and thank you again for allowing us in your home.